A Month of Learning by Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother Malka Bas Baruch and his sister Golda Leah Bas David Halevi. Toiva and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother Henya Bas Raberel and her father Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Be Pizer in memory of her husband Harav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Stanley Presser in memory of his mother Leah Bas Yehuda and his mother-in-law Golda Bas Libor and his wife Ruchel Mincha Bas Moshe. Rabbi and Dr. Yaakov and Malka Honig in memory of his mother Rabbanut Hensha Ita Bas Chaim Yehuda. David and Sharon Karpel and Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Karpel in memory of David and Tzvi's father, Zev Moshe ben Shlomo Yaakov. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her father, Yehoshua ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. Sarah Alpert and family in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel. Josh and Carol Sanborn again in memory of his mother, Chienna Bas Aryeh Leib, and his father, Shmuel Aryeh ben Baruch. Be Pizer in memory of her mother, Razel Bas Shammai. Leo and Tova Zimmer in memory of his father, Tzvi ben Ezriel, his mother, Yocheved Bas Yaakov Menachem Mendel. Week of Learning by Chaim Aber in memory of his mother, Freda Mapel Bas Shmayahu. Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his wife, Menucha Sarah Bas Yechiel Michel. Michael and Judith Beretsky in memory of his brother, Chaim Tzvi ben Gershom. Mark Lindner in memory of his father, Chaim ben Yecheskel Elimelech. Barbara Hollander in memory of her father, Shmuel Shlomo ben Yehuda Baruch. Judy and Jack Schiff in memory of her mother, Chaya Chava Bas Menachem Mendel. And today is 17th. There are no individual days of learning on the Luach. Okay, so yesterday we learned, and I'm going to sort of phrase it in sort of modern context. If a person sets aside funds to cover his korbanos for Naziros, let's say the three animals are $30, $30, and $40. So he puts $100 in an envelope and he writes my korbanos on the envelope and puts it on his desk. That's one possibility. The other possibility, he writes $30 for the oila, $30 for the chatas, $40 for the shlomim on the back of the envelope. So we learned that in the former case, if the money is all for korbanos but unspecified which korban, then all that money can be spent on nedavos. But if you have stipulated which funds are for which purpose, then the funds for the chatas are aser bahana, cannot be used otherwise, and have to be destroyed. In a modern context, you burn them. And if they were silver coins in the time of the Mishnah, you threw them in the ocean, in the Yam Suf. So Yamamelech. So think about it. There's $100 in the envelope, either way. Some of that money is chatas money, either way. So why would you be able to redesignate it for some other korban if you don't specify which bills are for the chatas?
You have a field.
Yeah.
Part of that field is Arla, but until you say this is Arla, it's not Arla.
Yes and no. I mean, we know the general area, we know the corners, we know anything that's dropped. I mean, it's the Torah. Besides there, the Torah spells it out.
All right,
So far, we don't have a source for this. There is, there is no logic to it. Okay, I'll give you a hint. There is no logic to it. It's totally inexplicable. As I could even argue that since it's undesignated money, there's a little chatas in each coin or a little chatas in each bill, and they all have to be destroyed. It's impossible to logically come up with an answer to that question. And that's where we're starting, obviously. The bottom of Chaf Dalet, Gemara is Hayulo Meos Sisumim. If you have undesignated money, Yiflul and Nadava, it can be utilized, it falls to an Nadava. So you can reallocate those funds for an Nadava. So the Gemara asks, V'halo demei chatas muravin behem. But there is chatas money mixed in with those other coins, and it's all one pile. Okay? So how can you use any of it or some of it for other karbanos? You may be taking the chatas money, and that's asur b'hana. So Omer Rabbi Yochanan halacha hi b'nutz. It's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai. And I think everybody knows what a halacha l'Moshe Messinai is. It's a Torah law that you can't find in the Torah. And we have a Masorah that Moshe told those over verbally. For instance, tefillin. The Torah says, put these things, totafos, on your head. Well, okay. So the halacha l'Moshe Messinai is it's on top of your head. It's a black box. It's got to have square edges. It has to have a black strap. If you're missing a piece in black, or if the corners get red, all of that is halacha l'Moshe Messinai. Okay, what? $300, they're not kosher. If they're less than 1,500, they're not kosher today. All right, any event. So Rabbi Yochanan says, please keep this in mind because we'll get to it at the end of this year as well. Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha hi b'nazir. It's a halacha l'Moshe Messinai that makes the distinction between designated and undesignated. Resh Lakish disagrees with him. Resh Lakish Aimer, he says it's a pasuk. L'chol nidreihem u'l'chol nidvoisam. Anything from your vows or from your voluntary offerings, and he says you can use that pasuk to say if the money was set aside because of a vow, which Nazirus is, it can be used for a nedava. Okay, so you have a machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, whether it's a pasuk or a halacha, and that's a difficulty because if it's a pasuk, there wouldn't be a halacha. Only if they can't find a pasuk. So obviously, Rabbi Yochanan would have to use that pasuk elsewhere. In any event, Bishloimel Rabbi Yochanan the Amar halacha hu ben nazir, that it's a special halacha Moshe Messinai when it comes to a nazir. Amtulahachi sesumim ein mufurashim lo. He says that it's because it's a halacha that we can make the distinction between the two kinds of set-aside funds. Okay? Ella Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish says it's a pasuk. And the pasuk doesn't make mention of designated or undesignated. L'chol nidreihem, l'chol nidvosam. That it shouldn't, if the source is the pasuk, you should be able to use either envelope for nedavas. Because the pasuk says if it was for a neder, and for one reason or another can't be used for the neder, you can use it for a nedava. It doesn't make that distinction. Okay, so Omar Rava tries to explain. Mufurashin lo matzis Amar. You can't tell me that for either the halacha or the pasuk that specified money can be diverted to a different kind of a korban in the case of a chatas. Kvar paska tana debei Rabbi Shmuel, because we have already gotten a psak in a brisa in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, rak kadashecha asher yulecha unidorecha, which the rak is the key word here, only or except for the holy things, meaning the korbanos animals or the money used to purchase korbanos animals, asher yehiyu, that you have, l'cha to you, unidorecha, or for your vows. So, if you have an animal, let's say a lady sheep, and you designate that as a korban, and then it has a baby. So since the baby is part of the mother before it's born, the baby has kedusha too. Now, if you have a chatas and you have a baby born to it, because lady sheep can be used for a chatas, you got a problem. You can't. The baby has the kedusha of a chatas, but you can't bring two chatas in because you only did one sin, and you can't do unnecessary chatas. So what you have to do is we have to work out what's going to happen to the baby, okay? Or similarly, if you were to have a vlade kedashim ubitumurasam, or you have a tamura. Now, we had a whole masechta in tamura. Tamura you're not allowed to do, but if you do it, it's done. And the tamura has the same kedusha as the source animal. So if you made a tamura on a chatas, you now have two chatas in, and you have the same problem as the mother and the baby where you had two chatas in. Okay, so in both of those cases, ma takanton, what do you do about it? Okay, so we have a pasuk. Tisa uvosa al hamakam asher yibchar Hashem. Take the extra animal and bring it to the place that God designates. We know that's the Beis Hamikdash. So that's what the pasuk says. So Yachol Ya'alem Lebeis HaMikdash. Maybe I should have to bring it. I think maybe I should have to bring it to the base of Achira. And lock them up and hold back from them food and drink, bishvil sheyamutsu, until they die. What? The baby. Yeah, the baby or the tamura. Okay? So Talmud Lomar, therefore, the next pasuk says, Va'asisa olosecha habasar v'hadam. You should, if it's an ola, you can make the ola, both the meat and the blood, because the whole ola gets burned. Okay? And the Alamalach to tell you, this pasuk comes to tell you, Kederech she'ata noheg ba'oila, noheg b'tumurasa. So this, between the two psukim, we have a hekesh that whatever the rules are of the ola, the rules are for the baby ola or the tamura. Actually, an ola can't have a baby; it's only a tamura. If it's a shlamim, the second animal can also be a shlam. But a chatas is different because you can only do one animal, right? Kederech she'asa noheg b'shlamim nahog b'vlados. You have the same halacha for the baby as you do for the mommy if she's a shlamim. So yachol, I might think af vlad chatas temuras asham came. If I have a baby of a chatas animal or a temura of an asham animal, maybe I would say the same rule. That it's a general rule across all korbanos, whatever the core animal's rules are, the next level animal, the baby or the temura, has the same din. Talmud Lomer, rock. So we go back to the pasuk and we look at the word rock, and it says only these. Okay, only the ola and the shlamim you can burn or make a shlamim or make an oila out of the second animal, but not a chatas or an asham. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. That's what Rabbi Shmuel says in his brisa. In the same brisa, Rabbi Akiva Aimer ein tzarech. You don't need the pasuk. You don't need the pasuk at all. Harehu Aimer. There's another pasuk that says asham hu, this asham, okay, b'vayosoy yihiyah, b'havoya. Can't say it. All right. In any event, that whatever the asham is, only the asham, and only in its an original state. So a baby or a temura is not the original asham in its original state. So you have that pasuk, and therefore you don't even need the brisa, according to Rebbe Kiva and the brisa.
What pasuk does it have for shlamim?
What?
What does it say about shlamim?
Shlamim isn't in that pasuk. The only animal in that pasuk is the asham. The chatas we've already discussed. You can't do more than one chatas for one sin. So you have no other option. Now we have a pasuk for an asham. So we don't need the brisa, and we don't need its pasuk to tell us that asham and chatas have different rules. That's Rebbe Akiva. So Katani, the brisa told us the following: Yachol ya'alem lebeis habechira. Maybe I would have to bring the temura or the baby to the base of bechira. V'yimna mehem mayim ezayin shvishvil sheyamusu, and deprive them of food and drink until they die. Okay? Talmud Lomar v'asisa olo secha. So the next pasuk says that, but when it comes to an ola, you can burn its meat and bring its blood on the mizbeach. Am I? So why would I say that the temura or the vlad would not be usable? Why would they say you have to let it die? Ha vlad chatas hu de gemirin ba misa. Only the chatas baby or temura. We've already learned in a different halacha l'Moshe Sinai that you can only have one animal, that you have to let that die. So not the temura of an ola or a shlamim. Okay? Ilav kra. So you need that pasuk. Okay? Otherwise, hava amina, vlad chatas v'chol makam. I could leave the vlad of the chatas. It gives birth at home. I designate this sheep is going to be my chatas when I go to Yerushalayim, and on the way or at home, it gives birth. So I might have thought I could leave it home. I could lock it in a pen, and when I get home, it'll be dead. The baby, always the baby. It's a gezeres hakasu. It's a halacha. What? Tsar balei chayim does not mean you cannot cause pain to an animal. That's not what it means. If that's what it meant, You wouldn't be able to ride a horse. You're putting weight on him. You wouldn't be able to use an animal as a pack animal. You wouldn't be able to kill an animal and eat it. Tsar Balei Chayim means you do not give discomfort to an animal for a non-requisite reason. You're allowed to kill an animal to eat it. You're allowed to put piled packages on a mule.
You can't hunt.
You can't hunt
Okay.
because you're killing or hurting the animal, and now it's not kosher. Okay, but you could snare. You could use a trap that catches its leg. Now that causes probably more pain than shooting it. Okay, that also, by the way, covers fishing. You can't go fishing unless you eat the fish you catch. You can't catch and release. That would be tsar. No, that's tsar balei chayim. And you're the one that brought it up, so you should have figured that. All right. In any event, so Vlad Kedoshim, the base of Echira. But the offspring, the children of other Kurbanos, we would have to take to the temple and let them die. Okay, Kamash Milan the low. So we say that the other Kurbanos, you do not have to let die, rather you use them as Nidavas. All right, now. What?
Sometimes you leave them in the pasture.
That is a different thing. That's if the base animal gets a mum and is no longer you or something happens to the base animal where it can't be used. So you let it wait for it to get a mum, you pasture it, and then you redeem it, and then you buy a legitimate korban with the money. That's a whole separate package of rules. So in any event, Katani, the Brisa teaches us, Yachol af vlad chatas utmuras asham kain. This rule may apply to the offspring of a chatas or the tamura of an asham, meaning that maybe you could use them as other korbanos. So the pasuk says, Talmud Lomar Rak. It's a specific rule designated to leave out.
Is there a time limit that you have to use the baby as a carton?
What?
Or usher?
The same time limit of the mother, which is, it depends on what you're bringing it for, but the shortest possible time frame would be the next holiday or the next trip to Jerusalem. And the longest time frame would be a holiday cycle starting at Pesach.
Michael, you can't chef the mother and the baby on the same day.
That's also a totally different rule. And we're not checking the baby on that. I mean, you do it, you're correct, there is that rule.
There is, yeah.
But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's also a gezeres, a pasuk that has no logic to it. It's just a pasuk. All right. So lama likra, what do we need the pasuk for? Hilchas hagemirila. But we already learned that the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, vlad chatas lemisa azil, that you have to let the offspring of a female chatas die. We already had that already. So, Hachinami, that's absolutely true. The purpose of the pasuk, even because again, we can't have a halacha l'Moshe Messina and a pasuk, because by definition, a halacha l'Messina, it means it wasn't in a pasuk. So why do we have both? Because we need to bring new information concerning the asham. Okay. So the Gemara says, Asham nami hilchasa gemira. But we also have a halacha l'Moshe Messina covering the asham. Asham nami hilchasa gemira. So kol she'ilu chatas meisa be'ashim ra'ah. What we learn from the combination of the halacha and the pasuk is anytime the same situation occurs to a chatas and an asham, The Chattas baby is left to die. The Asham or its Tamura or its offspring goes to pasture until it develops a mum, and then you deal with it. Okay, now we have to understand one thing. When you set it out to pasture, it's in a very interesting status. It does not have its original kedusha. By the physical act of taking it out and pasturing it, you reduce / eliminate its kedusha. Okay, so now we're going to learn a halacha that applies to that, but you still can't just use it until it's clearly got a mum, and then you buy it and you sell it and use the money for another korban, because it has some kedusha. So it's in this peculiar status. Okay, Hava Amina Hilchas. I could have said that the halacha l'Moshe is what?
If it's a, right? If it's
What I skip?
What's the word, just to bring back the fact that says, if it's such that it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
Okay, okay. So Ella ime hilchasa. If we only have the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, hava amina hilchasa. That's the rule. But it's a halacha, a lachila and a b'diavad. I'm not supposed to burn it on the altar. But if I did, b'diavad, it was a valid korban, and I didn't do anything wrong. I might have guessed that. But the combination of the halacha and the pasuk, mashmal on kra, but now that I also have the pasuk, te'i makriv le, so the pasuk specifically says you can't do that, even with diavad. So now the combination of the halacha and the pasuk, you would get malchus or whatever the punishment is if you used the baby as an offering. Yet it has kedusha, so you can't use it for anything else. So therefore, your only option is to let it die. Okay? And it's asur b'hana, you can't feed it. I mean, there's nothing you can do with it, so you let it die. Just like there was nothing you could do with the money, so you throw it in the ocean. When you have no other options, you have to do what you have to do. So Rabbi Akiva Omer in Tzarech. You don't even need the pasuk to tell you that you can't use the tamura or the offspring of an asham or a chattas on the altar. Harehu Omer ashamu b'haviyasa. We already had the pasuk, only the asham the way it started out. Okay, so lama likra. So now, with all of these other limudim, we've covered all the territory. What do I need the Asham Hu pasuk for? Gemira law. It's a galach l'Moshe Sinai. Kol shechatas mesa ka Asham roa. We already had that. If it's a chatas and it has to die, meaning the baby or the tamura, if it's an Asham, you put it out to pasture. So what do I need the pasuk Asham Hu for? Achinami, you would be able to figure all that out. Kiasa kro l'Rav. We need that pasuk because of something Rav was teaching. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rav Huna tells us that Rav was trying to teach us Asham sheniktak l'ra'oyim. You have to have the action of taking the asham and bringing it to the pasture. That is the way that you sort of reduce its kedusha or remove its kedusha, by the act of taking it out of the Beis HaMikdash and bringing it to where other animals are grazing. Okay? So now that it's in the pasture and it's in this neither here nor there status, if somebody else comes along and inadvertently takes that animal and is makdish it for an ola, kosher, that ola would be fine. Well, obviously, you don't stick it live on the mizbeach.
You have to bring the baby to the Beis Hamikdash first before you bring it to the pasture?
No, the baby can't, with the baby dies, an asham has to be a male, so there can't be a baby. We're talking about a tamura. Okay? There are whole complicated rules of karbanos, and we could do a 10-hour series on karbanos, we still wouldn't know them all. All right, in any event, okay, time of the nita. The only reason it's kosher as a korban is because you went through the action which sort of desanctifies it, okay? Lo notit, but if you left it in the Beis HaMikdash, somebody says, yeah, I'd love to use that as an oil. And you say, okay, fine, you're saving me a trip to the field. No, then both of you would get malchus for that, okay? So the Amar Kra, who? Now we go back to our pasuk, Hashem who? It has to be the initial status. Now when you take it out to the field, it's the status, so to speak. Okay, so now, I don't know, you want me to go weiter, Kenny? This is the beginning of a new Indian.
Right. You know what? Just go a little.
Okay. This now remember I said before. Remember Rabbi Yochanan, who was our first halacha l'Moshe Messina, and his halacha l'Moshe Messina specifically was that the designated, undesignated the difference is based on halacha l'Moshe Messina ben Nazir. So the implication is it's a special halacha l'Moshe Messina that applies only to unnecessary, quote unquote, korbanos for a Nazir. It was the wife was a Nazir, he undid it, or he was a Nazir and he asked the Shaila and undid it, and now you've got this money or these animals that are no longer usable for a Nazir korban. So that was the halacha l'Moshe Messina of Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Mar halacha even Nazir. Rabbi Yochanan says this is halacha l'Moshe Messina for Nazir. V'suleka, there's no other case where this distinction would also apply. V'hatanya, we have a brisa that says v'shar chayave kinin shebitayra. Okay, so now we're back to korbanos again. There are certain circumstances where you can bring a brace of birds. One is the chatas and one is the asham. And if you were, it's the same like when the Nazir shaves inadvertently or is a tameh, he has this special korban, 2 birds and a sheep at the end of his tumah. But there are other cases where 2 birds are used. One is in a chatas and one is an asham, a lady who has a baby. Well, a chatas and an ola, I'm sorry. And there are cases where, like, if you owe for certain averas, you can't afford animals, you can bring birds instead. There are a whole bunch of cases where birds can be brought. Okay, all the other cases where you have to bring a bird, if you designate funds, You put 20 bucks aside or 20 mea, whatever your currency is, and you say, these coins are going for my khan, for my pair of birds. But you did not say this coin for this one and this coin for that one. So that compared with, I put 2 coins and I put a Post-it note on it. This is one, this is the other. So that would be the same halacha of the diversion to use for nedavos. Shehifrishu meyos lekinim. You set it aside. Rotzo lehevi behem chatus behema yavo. You decide instead, you know what? I'll save up. I'll buy an animal instead of a bird. So you could divert that money to pay for part or all of the animal. Or oil behema yavo. If he wants to use the money and buy an ola with it, he can do that. Or mace, if the guy who set aside the money dies, vihulo meos isumim, if it's undesignated, yiflu in a dava, his children can use those Kodesh coins for a nedava. But if they're designated, he can't. So here, Rabbi Yochanan is being challenged that there are other cases, not just Nazir, and we'll tune in tomorrow and learn. Amen. Yehishme. Rabba Mabalach, Lama Lama. Amen. 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 Okay, good nerve Shabbos. What?
Can you upgrade from
A good
If
Shabbos.
you